My name is Joshua Bennett. I am 32 years old. And a few weeks ago, I heard my own father say I was too embarrassing to be seen with my brother's new in-laws. I was standing in the hallway, gripping a mug of lukewarm coffee, when his voice cut through the air from the living room. Your brother's in-laws are elite. You'll humiliate us. Do you understand, Joshua? Don't ruin this. He said it like I was a problem to be managed. A stain on the carpet that he couldn't quite scrub out. Before I tell you about the moment the ground swallowed them whole, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love reading about the different places my story reaches. I froze. The floorboards in our old colonial house in the suburbs of Chicago always creaked, so I stayed perfectly still. I knew that tone. It was the manager Thomas voice. The voice he used when he was trying to close a deal or discipline a subordinate. Except he wasn't talking to an employee. He was talking about his youngest son. My brother, Ethan, had just gotten engaged to a millionaire heiress, Leah Harrington. She was the kind of woman you see in glossy magazines, the ones found in first-class airport lounges. And suddenly, my messy, date-nerd life was a threat to their shiny new image. They didn't care that I spent my nights rebuilding revenue models for failing companies. They didn't care that I fixed broken systems that saved people's jobs. To them, I was just the awkward guy in the hoodie who asked too many questions at dinner and never knew which fork to use for the salad. So, while they were packing suitcases full of designer outfits for a New Year's Eve engagement party at a luxury resort in Miami, I was told to stay home, keep things simple, stay out of sight. They didn't want me at the party. They didn't want me anywhere near the people they called elite, and they definitely didn't want anyone knowing I was part of the family. What they didn't know was that those same elite in-laws had been working with me for months under a different name. They were trusting my numbers to save their entire business empire from bankruptcy. And on the night my family tried to hide me, those in-laws ended up staring at a framed photo in the lobby, recognizing my face, and screaming my name in front of everyone. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand why that moment felt like oxygen filling a room that had been airless for decades, you have to understand the hallway. I was standing there listening. My mother, Karen, was pacing. I could hear the click-clack of her heels. She was nervous. She always got nervous when money or status was involved. "Tom, you have to be firm with him," she whispered. Her voice wasn't malicious, which somehow made it worse. It was pitying. "You know how Josh is. He'll start talking about algorithms or interest rates. He doesn't understand the social cues. The Harringtons are old money. They are sophisticated." "I know, Karen," my dad replied. I could imagine him rubbing his temples. "Ethan has worked too hard for this. He's a lawyer at a top firm. He's about to marry into a dynasty. We can't let Joshua's situation drag him down. This is about the inheritance. This is about the future." Situation. That's what they called my life. A situation. I looked down at my clothes. I was wearing gray sweatpants and a faded graphic tee. I hadn't shaved in 2 days because I had been pulling an all-nighter for a client. My eyes were red-rimmed. To them, I looked like a failure. A 32-year-old man who still spent too much time on his computer. My Aunt Linda, who was visiting to help them pack, chimed in. Her voice was like a cheese grater against my eardrums. "Is he still unemployed? I heard he's just doing freelance work." "That's just a fancy word for out of work, isn't it? Poor Ethan. He has to carry the weight of the family name all by himself." I gripped the coffee mug tighter. The heat burned my palm, but I welcomed the pain. It grounded me. Unemployed. That's what they thought. They didn't see the contracts signed with non-disclosure agreements lying on my desk upstairs. They didn't see the bank transfers that hit my account every month. Sums that would make my father's annual salary look like pocket change. They saw a hoodie, so they assumed poverty. They saw silence, so they assumed stupidity. "I'll handle him," my dad said, his voice finalizing the decision. "He stays here. We'll tell the Harringtons he had a conflict. A sick cat. Anything." "We don't have a cat, Tom," my mom said weakly. "Then he has the flu. It doesn't matter. He's not coming." I quietly backed away, stepping carefully over the creaky board. I retreated up the stairs to my room, my sanctuary. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since I was 10 years old. On my desk, my laptop was humming. The screen was filled with rows of neon green data. It was a dashboard for a project I had codenamed Project Phoenix. The client was a massive hospitality group that was bleeding cash. They had hired me to find the leak and plug it. The irony was thick enough to choke on. Downstairs, my family was plotting to hide me to protect their reputation with the Harringtons. Upstairs, I was the only reason the Harrington Empire still had a reputation to protect. I sat down in my ergonomic chair, my sanctuary, my command center. I looked at the invitation that Ethan had casually tossed on the kitchen counter earlier that week, the one I wasn't supposed to touch. I had taken a picture of it on my phone. The Harrington and Bennett Engagement Gala. New Year's Eve. The Harrington Grand Resort, Miami. Gold foil letters. Heavy cardstock. It smelled like money. It smelled like exclusion. "Don't ruin this," my dad had said. I looked at the data on my screen. Revenue projections were up 40% thanks to the dynamic pricing model I had implemented last week. I wasn't going to ruin it. I was the one building it. But they didn't know that. And at that moment, sitting in the dark of my room while they discussed my shameful existence downstairs, I decided something. I wasn't going to tell them. Not yet. I let them believe I was the failure. I let them believe I was the ghost in the living room. Because when the truth finally came out, I wanted it to be undeniable. I wanted it to be public. I just didn't realize how soon that opportunity would come. I didn't grow up thinking I was embarrassing. As a kid, I just thought I was different. While other kids at our family barbecues ran around the yard playing tag, I was the one sitting at the plastic table, counting how many hot dogs people took versus how many buns were left in the bag. I remember one 4th of July clearly. I was 10. My Uncle Mike was manning the grill, sweating profusely. My dad was standing next to him, holding a beer, laughing loudly about some sports game. I walked up to them, holding a notebook. "Uncle Mike," I said, my voice high and serious, "you're cooking the burgers too fast. Based on the consumption rate of the last hour, we're going to run out of meat in 20 minutes, but we'll have 30% of the buns left over. If you slow down production or cut the remaining patties in half, you can optimize the supply." The laughter stopped. My dad looked down at me. He didn't look impressed by my math. He looked annoyed. "Joshua," he sighed, the beer bottle clinking against his ring. "Don't analyze the food. Just eat it. Go play football with Ethan. Be normal. Be normal." That was the mantra of my childhood. Ethan, 3 years older than me, was everything they wanted. He was athletic. He had a smile that charmed grandmothers and teachers alike. He knew exactly when to laugh, when to compliment someone's watch, when to ask about golf. He was the golden child. I was the why child. Why do you invest in that company if their debt-to-income ratio is so bad? Why do we say we're fine with money if mom is crying over the grocery bill? People laughed at first, then they stopped inviting me into conversations. My parents would pull me aside afterward. "Smile, Joshua. Talk about school. Don't interrogate people." The worst incident, the one that really sealed my fate as the family pariah, happened at Ethan's high school graduation dinner. We were at a nice Italian restaurant. Ethan was beaming, wearing his graduation gown, surrounded by relatives. I was 14. I was sitting next to a distant cousin, staring at the menu. I wasn't looking at the food. I was looking at the prices versus the portion sizes. I started asking the waiter about their tip pooling structure and whether the restaurant paid a living wage or relied on the federal minimum for tipped workers. I was genuinely curious. I wanted to understand the economics of the service industry. But I was clumsy. In my excitement to show the waiter a calculation I'd done on a napkin, I knocked over a tray he was holding. A bowl of marinara sauce went flying. It didn't hit the floor. It hit the pristine white dress of Mrs. Henderson, the wife of my dad's boss. The silence that followed was deafening. Red sauce dripped down her expensive linen skirt like a crime scene. My mother's face turned the color of the sauce. My dad grabbed my arm. Hard. He marched me out to the parking lot while Ethan apologized profusely to the table, charming everyone back into a good mood. Outside, under the flickering street lamp, my dad hissed at me. "This is exactly what I mean, Joshua. You don't belong in these settings. You have no social grace. You are a liability." A liability. That word stuck with me. In accounting, a liability is a debt. Something you owe. Something that drags down your net worth. After that night, I stopped trying to fit in. If I was a liability in their social world, I would become an asset in my own. I buried myself in numbers. In high school, while Ethan was going to prom and captaining the debate team, I was teaching myself coding and statistical analysis. In college, while other people were rushing fraternities, I was running A/B tests on website layouts for small businesses that couldn't afford a real agency. I realized something powerful. Data doesn't care if you're awkward. Data doesn't care if you have a stain on your shirt. Data only cares about the truth. By the time I was 25, I had started Bennett Analytics from my bedroom. It wasn't much at first, just me and a laptop. But I had a knack for seeing patterns where others saw chaos. Hotels and resorts started coming to me. They had a common problem: huge overhead, fluctuating demand, and bleeding revenue. I would sit in my tiny apartment, staring at charts at 3 a.m., tweaking prices and ad strategies until the graphs finally turned upward. But back home, none of that mattered. When I mentioned landing my first major client, my mother smiled politely and said, "So, you're still doing that computer thing? Have you thought about applying to the bank? Uncle Mike could get you an interview." My dad waved it off. "It's a phase. He needs a real job with benefits. Look at Ethan. He just made junior partner." Ethan went straight into corporate law. He bought a condo downtown. He drove a leased BMW. He brought home girlfriends who looked like models. He was the success story. But here is the secret I kept locked in my chest, burning hotter than any anger. 3 years ago, my parents almost lost the house. Dad had made some bad investments, ironically, based on tips from his golf buddies rather than actual data. They were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The foreclosure notice was in the mail. I found it on the kitchen counter when I visited for laundry. I didn't say a word. I went back to my apartment, logged into my business account, and set up a shell company called Heritage Trust. I contacted their bank. I paid off the entire arrears and set up a monthly transfer that would cover 50% of their mortgage payments indefinitely. I had the bank send a letter saying it was part of an anonymous administrative adjustment from a long-lost distant relative's estate settlement, a clerical error in their favor. It was ridiculous, but they were so desperate they believed it. I remember sitting at Sunday dinner the week after. My mom was crying tears of joy. "It's a miracle," she sobbed. "God was watching over us." "Or maybe," my dad said, puffing out his chest, "it's good karma. I've always been a good man. Good things happen to good people." Ethan raised a glass. "To the Bennett luck." I sat there, eating my mashed potatoes, saying nothing. I had saved their home. I was paying for the roof over their heads, and they were toasting to luck. I looked at my dad, at the relief in his eyes, and I felt a strange mix of love and resentment. I wanted to scream. It was me, the embarrassment, the liability. "I saved you," but I didn't, because I knew if I told them, they would be ashamed. Or worse, they wouldn't believe me. They would ask where I stole the money. So I let Heritage Trust be the hero, and I remained the ghost. I thought I could go on like that forever, being the silent benefactor. But then the storm hit, and the storm had a name: Harrington and Vale. The collision of my two worlds began with a notification sound at 3:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. I was in my apartment, half asleep over a spreadsheet, when an email popped up. The subject line was stark: urgent. Mid-size resort chain in critical condition. Can you help? It was from Sam, my closest friend and the only person who really knew the scale of my business. Sam ran a boutique agency that handled crisis management for high-end brands. "Josh, The text below read, "I have a client. They are bleeding out. Their booking system is a disaster, their marketing is targeting the wrong demographic, and they are burning cash faster than they can print it. They need a miracle. They need you." I rubbed my eyes and typed back, "Who is it?" "Harrington and Vale Resorts," came the reply. I froze. Harrington and Vale. I knew the name. Everyone knew the name. They were a legacy brand. Old money. Luxury. The kind of places my parents drooled over in travel brochures but could never afford. "Send me the data," I wrote. Over the next 48 hours, I didn't sleep. I dove into their systems. It was worse than Sam had said. It was a catastrophe. They were relying on reputation alone while their infrastructure crumbled. Their pricing was static in a dynamic market. Their website was losing 60% of potential guests at the checkout page because of a glitch in the mobile interface. I built a rescue plan. It was aggressive. It required gutting their entire ad strategy and implementing a dynamic pricing algorithm I had written myself. 2 days later, I was on a Zoom call with the CEO. "This is Graham Harrington," the voice said. The connection was audio only because their resort Wi-Fi was down. Another thing I needed to fix. He sounded tired, defeated. "I've been told you're the architect who can stop the bleeding." "I can," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "But you have to trust me. The data is going to look ugly before it looks beautiful." "I don't care about pretty," Graham said. "I care about survival. My grandfather built this company. I won't be the one to bury it." I liked him. He was direct. He wasn't like the pompous rich guys my dad tried to impress. He was a man with a weight on his shoulders. "Consider it done, Mr. Harrington," I said. For the next 3 months, I lived and breathed Harrington and Vale. I was a ghost in their machine. I rerouted their budget. I fixed the user experience. I targeted bleisure travelers, business people who extend trips for leisure, which was a market segment they had completely ignored. The results were immediate. Occupancy jumped 15% in the first month. Revenue followed. I was feeling good. I was feeling powerful. Then the universe decided to play its joke. I went to my parents' house for a Sunday dinner. I walked in, expecting the usual lecture about my hair or my lack of a real career. Instead, there was champagne on the table. Ethan was standing in the middle of the living room, wearing a tailored navy suit, holding a glass of Dom Perignon. My mom was dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My dad was beaming like he had just won the lottery. "Joshua, you're late," Dad boomed. He was actually happy to see me, which meant something big had happened. Come in, come in. Your brother has news." I took off my hoodie. I saw my mom wince at my t-shirt underneath, and walked over. "What's going on?" Ethan stepped forward. That easy, practiced smile plastered on his face. "I did it, Josh," I proposed, and she said yes. "That's great," I said genuinely. "Who is she?" Ethan had been dating a string of women, but I hadn't met the current one. "Leah," he said, dropping the name like a heavy gold bar. "Leah Harrington." The room seemed to tilt. The champagne glass in my hand felt suddenly slippery. "Harrington," I repeated. "As in, the resorts?" "The very same," Ethan said, puffing out his chest. "Her family owns the entire chain. Harrington and Vale. They are royalty, Josh. Absolute royalty." My dad clapped Ethan on the back. "Can you believe it? My son, marrying a Harrington. We're going to be set for life. The inheritance alone. Imagine the connections. This is the big leagues. We have to make a good impression," Mom fluttered, already mentally redecorating the house. "We have to look the part." "Oh, Ethan, her ring. Was it big enough?" "It was perfect," Ethan said. "Graham, that's her father, the CEO, he loves me. We played golf last week. He said he needs a sharp legal mind in the family." I almost choked on my air. Graham, the man I had been on the phone with almost every day for 3 months. The man who had confided in me that his board of directors was sharks and he needed me to save him. Graham Harrington didn't need a sharp legal mind to play golf with. He needed a data strategist to keep his company from flatlining. And here was my brother, claiming to be the golden boy of the family that I was secretly saving from ruin. "That's amazing, Ethan," I managed to say. "It is," Dad said, turning to me, his smile fading slightly. "Now listen, Joshua. Leia's family is elite. They are not like us. They are sophisticated. When you meet them, please, for the love of God, don't talk about your little computer gigs. Just nod and smile." "Actually," Ethan interrupted, looking at his polished shoes, "that's something we need to talk about." I looked at my brother. I saw the hesitation in his eyes, the cowardice. "What is it?" I asked. "The engagement party," Ethan said. "It's on New Year's Eve, at the flagship resort in Miami." "I know the place," I muttered. I knew it intimately. I knew its average daily rate, its occupancy trends, and the fact that the HVAC system on the 4th floor needed maintenance. "Right," Ethan said. "Well, it's going to be a very high-profile event. Senators, investors, the board of directors." He paused. "And," I pushed, "and," he sighed, "Dad and I think maybe it's best if you don't come to the main gala." There it was. The knife. "Don't come," I asked, my voice flat. It's a lot of pressure, Josh," Ethan said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I flinched away. "You get anxious in crowds. You say weird things. We just want everything to go smoothly. For the family. You understand, right?" I looked at my parents. Mom was looking at the carpet. Dad was glaring at me, daring me to argue. "We'll have a separate family dinner later," Mom offered weakly. "Just us. Without the elite people." I looked back at Ethan, my brother, the golden child, the future son-in-law of the man who paid my invoices. "You're uninviting me to your engagement party because I'm embarrassing," I stated. "It's strategic, Josh," Ethan said. "Don't take it personally." "Strategic?" I laughed. A harsh, dry sound. "You want to talk strategy, Ethan?" "Don't start," Dad warned. "Do not ruin this night for your brother. You will stay home. You will not humiliate us." End of discussion. I looked at them, really looked at them, the fear in their eyes, the desperate need to belong to a class that didn't care about them. "Fine," I said. "I won't come." I grabbed my hoodie and walked out. As I drove back to my apartment, my phone buzzed. It was an email from Graham Harrington. Subject: year-end performance and a personal favor. I didn't open it until I got home. I sat in the dark, the blue light of the screen illuminating my face. "Dear Joshua, the numbers are in. We didn't just survive the quarter, we crushed it. You saved us, son. I don't know how you did it, but you turned this ship around. We are hosting a massive gala on New Year's Eve to celebrate the turnaround and announce the future of the brand. I want you there, not as a vendor, as my guest of honor. I want the board to meet the architect of our success. Please say yes. I'll send a car. Best, Graham." I stared at the screen. My brother had uninvited me because I was a liability. His father-in-law was inviting me because I was the savior. A slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Okay, Graham," I whispered to the empty room. "I'll be there." The week leading up to New Year's Eve was a study in contrast. My family was in a frenzy of anxiety and vanity, while I moved with the cold precision of a man assembling a weapon. My mother called me 3 times to check in, which was her code for making sure I wasn't planning to crash the party. "We just want you to be comfortable, Josh," she said, her voice high and tight. "You know how you hate loud music. We're doing this for you." "I know, Mom," I said, typing away on my other screen, finalizing the Q1 projections for Harrington and Vale. "I'm very comfortable." "Good. Oh, Dad bought a new tuxedo. Wait until you see it. It's a rental, but it looks like $1 million. "That's great, Mom." I hung up and looked at the garment bag hanging on my closet door. It wasn't a rental. After accepting Graham's invitation, I had called Sam. "I need a suit," I told him. "Not a suit for a funeral. A suit for a coronation." Sam didn't ask questions. He took me to an Italian tailor downtown, a place that didn't have a sign out front, just a heavy wooden door. The tailor, an old man named Giuseppe, measured me without saying a word. When I put on the finished tuxedo, midnight blue, peak lapels, silk lining, I looked in the three-way mirror and didn't recognize myself. The hoodie was gone. The slouch was gone. The fabric hugged my shoulders and tapered at my waist. I looked dangerous. "You clean up well, boss," Sam said, grinning. "Now the hair." I went to a barber. I shaved the scruff. I styled my hair back. When I walked out onto the street, breathing in the cold December air, I felt a shift in my internal gravity. For 32 years, I had believed their story about me, that I was awkward, that I was less than. But standing there, feeling the weight of the expensive wool against my skin, I realized something. I hadn't been awkward. I had been bored. I hadn't been less than. I had been underutilized. Then came the final insult. 2 days before the party, Ethan asked to meet me for coffee. I thought for a fleeting second that he might apologize, that he might say, "Screw the optics, you're my brother, come to the party." We met at a Starbucks. Ethan checked his watch 3 times in the first 5 minutes. "Look, Josh," he started, swirling his latte. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay with everything. Leia's parents, they are intense. Graham is a terrifying guy. He eats lawyers for breakfast. I'm just trying to protect you from that environment." "Protect me," I repeated. "By hiding me." "It's not hiding," he insisted. "It's managing assets." I almost laughed. "Managing assets. You know," I said, leaning forward, "you talk a lot about Graham. What's he like?" "Oh, he's brilliant," Ethan gushed, clearly making it up as he went. "We have these long talks about macroeconomics. He values my legal counsel. I think he's grooming me for a board seat." I took a sip of my black coffee. I knew for a fact that Graham thought Ethan was a pleasant enough kid, but a bit of a lightweight. He had told me that on a call last Tuesday. "Well, good luck, Ethan," I said. "I hope you get everything you deserve." "Thanks, bro," he said. He stood up and pulled out his wallet. He threw a $20 bill on the table. "Coffee's on me. Buy yourself something nice for dinner on New Year's. Order a pizza or something." I stared at the $20. It wasn't a gift. It was a dismissal. It was hush money for the poor relation. "Keep it," I said. "You might need it." "Don't be like that," he scoffed. "I'm marrying an heiress. I'm done needing money." He walked out, the bell on the door jingling behind him. I picked up the $20. I folded it neatly and put it in my pocket. I would keep it. I would frame it one day, a reminder of the moment I severed the emotional cord that tied me to his approval. I went back to my apartment and packed my bag. Not a duffel bag, but a sleek leather weekender I had bought just for this trip. On the morning of New Year's Eve, my parents and Ethan flew first class to Miami, probably paid for by the Harringtons. I took a private charter that Graham had arranged. When I landed in Miami, the air was warm and smelled of salt and jasmine. A driver was waiting for me. He held a sign that didn't say Bennett. It said the architect. "Mr. Bennett?" he asked, opening the door of a black SUV. "Mr. Harrington is expecting you. He's very excited." "Thank you," I said. As we drove toward the resort, my heart started to hammer against my ribs. This was it. The point of no return. I pulled out my phone. I saw a text from my mom. "Mom, we just arrived. The resort is stunning. So sad you couldn't make it because of your stomach flu. Get some rest. We'll send photos." I felt a flash of anger, but I pushed it down. I converted it into fuel. "Stomach flu," I muttered. We pulled up to the service entrance, as Graham had requested. He wanted to meet me privately before the gala began. I was ushered into his office, a massive suite overlooking the ocean. Graham was standing by the window. He turned when I entered. He was a tall man, silver-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. He looked at me, then at my tuxedo and smiled. "Joshua," he said, extending his hand. "You look different than on Zoom. Better lighting," I joked. He laughed. A genuine, booming laugh. "You saved my ass, son. I mean it. The board was ready to oust me. The numbers you gave us. They didn't just stabilize us, they gave us a future. I just looked at the data, Graham. The answers were always there. Humility," he nodded. "Rare quality, especially in my family." He poured 2 glasses of scotch. "Tonight is going to be big. I have a surprise for the stakeholders. A wall of innovation in the main lobby. We're showcasing the people who made this year possible." My stomach flipped. "Graham, about tonight. There's something you should know. My last name, Bennett." Graham paused, glass halfway to his mouth. "Yes? Bennett. My brother is Ethan Bennett, the man marrying your daughter." Graham stared at me. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then his eyes widened. "Ethan? The lawyer kid? The one who talks about golf too much?" "That's the one." "Wait," Graham frowned. "Ethan told me his brother was unwell, that he had struggles. He made it sound like you were incapable." "He thinks I am," I said. "He uninvited me tonight because he thinks I'm an embarrassment to your elite standards." Graham set the glass down. Hard. The sound echoed in the room. His face darkened, not with anger at me, but with a cold, terrifying realization. "He hid you," Graham said softly. "He hid the man who saved my company because he was ashamed of him?" "He doesn't know," I said. "None of them know. They think I'm just a guy who plays on computers in his basement." Graham looked at me, a new respect dawning in his eyes. Then, a mischievous, predatory grin spread across his face. "Oh," he said. "Oh, this is going to be fun." He walked over to his desk and picked up a phone. "Celeste," he said to his wife. "Change of plans for the introduction. We're going to need the spotlight. Yes, the big one." He hung up and turned to me. "Joshua," he said, "are you ready to stop being a ghost?" I buttoned my jacket. I checked my reflection in the glass of the balcony door. I looked like a man who owned the place. "I'm ready," I said. The Harrington Grand Resort was a palace of marble and gold. The driveway was a parade of Bentleys, Ferraris, and Lamborghinis. My parents and Ethan were already inside. I could picture them. Dad adjusting his rental tie, Mom clutching her purse, Ethan scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. They were swimming in a shark tank, thinking they were the predators, unaware they were the bait. I waited in the car until the exact moment Graham had texted me. 8 p.m., the height of arrivals. The car Graham had arranged for my entrance wasn't the SUV I arrived in. He had insisted on a switch. A vintage Rolls-Royce Phantom, black as night, pulled up to the main valet. The valet rushed to open the door. I stepped out. Flashbulbs popped. Not for me specifically, but for the car, for the mystery of who was inside. I adjusted my cuffs. I walked up the red carpet, ignoring the whispers. Inside, the lobby was cavernous. A jazz band was playing. Waiters in white gloves moved like ghosts with trays of caviar. And there they were, standing near the fountain, looking desperately around for someone to impress. My family. My dad saw me first. He squinted. I saw the confusion on his face. He recognized the walk, but he couldn't reconcile the context. Joshua? In a tuxedo? Coming out of a Rolls-Royce? No, must be a look-alike. Then I got closer. "Josh!" Ethan's voice cut through the jazz. It wasn't a greeting. It was a gasp of horror. My mother grabbed my father's arm. "Oh my God! He came. He's going to ruin it." I stopped right in front of them. "Evening," I said calmly. "What the hell are you doing here?" Ethan hissed, stepping into my personal space. His face was pale. "I told you. You aren't invited. Security. Where is security?" "Keep your voice down," I said. My voice low but hard as steel. "You're making a scene. Not me." "You need to leave," Dad growled. stepping up beside Ethan. The manager Thomas' voice was back, shaking with rage. Now, before anyone sees you, you ungrateful, selfish. Mr. Bennett, a voice interrupted them. It was a concierge holding a clipboard. He wasn't looking at my dad. He was looking at me. Mr. Joshua Bennett? Mr. Harrington is ready for the presentation. He requested you be near the stage. My father's jaw dropped. What? No, you mean Ethan Bennett, the groom. The concierge glanced at Ethan, then checked his list. No, sir. The groom is at table 4. Mr. Joshua Bennett is listed as guest of honor. Right this way, sir. The concierge gestured toward the velvet rope area. I looked at my family. Their faces were a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Guest of honor? Mom whispered. I'll see you inside, I said to them, and I walked away. I didn't look back. I followed the concierge past the velvet ropes into the VIP section. I stood there, alone, holding a glass of sparkling water. I watched my family being herded to a table near the back. The family table, but certainly not the power table. They kept craning their necks, staring at me, whispering frantically to each other. Then, the lights dimmed. The music stopped. A spotlight hit the stage. Graham Harrington walked out. He looked regal. The room went silent. Welcome, everyone, Graham said into the microphone. Tonight we celebrate 2 things. First, the love between my daughter Leia and her fiancé, Ethan. A polite golf clap. Ethan stood up, waved awkwardly, and sat down. He looked terrified. He was staring at me. But secondly, Graham continued, his voice gaining strength, we celebrate the survival of this company. You all know we had a hard year. Some of you in this room bet against us. He paused, letting the tension build. But we didn't just survive. We evolved. And we didn't do it alone. Celeste Harrington, his wife, stepped up to the microphone. She was elegant, formidable. We did it because of a vision, a new way of seeing our world through data. Behind them, a massive curtain covered a wall in the lobby. We call this the Wall of Innovation, Graham said. And at the center of it is the architect of our turnaround. Graham gestured to the curtain. Pull it. The velvet fell. The wall was magnificent. Gold frames, backlit. And right in the center, larger than the rest, was a portrait. It was me, not the hoodie version. The version from my LinkedIn profile, the professional one I kept secret. Below it, in bold brass letters, Joshua Bennett, strategic architect, the savior of our legacy. A collective gasp went through the room. Joshua Bennett, Graham's voice boomed. Where are you, son? The spotlight swung around the room. Found me. I stood there, blinded by the light for a second. This man, Graham said, pointing at me. This man reshaped our entire business model. He is the reason our stock is up 40%. He is the reason 5,000 employees still have jobs this Christmas. Ladies and gentlemen, the genius behind Bennett Analytics, Joshua Bennett. Thunderous applause. It wasn't polite clapping. It was roaring. People were standing up. Board members I recognized from Zoom calls were nodding at me. I looked at table 4. My parents were frozen. They looked like statues carved out of ice. My mother had her hand over her mouth. My father looked like he had been punched in the gut. And Ethan? Ethan looked at the photo on the wall, then at me, then at Leia. Leia was clapping furiously, looking at me with admiration. She turned to Ethan and mouthed, "That's your brother? You said he was unemployed." I walked up to the stage. I shook Graham's hand. I kissed Celeste on the cheek. I took the microphone. "Thank you, Graham," I said. My voice was steady. It was an honor to work with a family that understands the true value of people. That understands that value isn't about what you wear or how you talk at dinner parties. It's about what you build. I looked directly at table 4. I made eye contact with my father. It's about seeing the worth in things that others overlook. I handed the mic back. The applause started again. Graham put his arm around my shoulder. "Come. Let me introduce you to the senator." As we walked off stage, I glanced back one last time. My family was still sitting there, small, shrinking, in a room full of the elite they so desperately wanted to impress. They were the only ones who didn't belong. The hour following the speech was a blur of handshakes and business cards. I was offered 3 consultancy contracts before I even finished my first drink. People who wouldn't have looked twice at me a week ago were now hanging on my every word about predictive modeling. But the real confrontation was inevitable. I saw them cornering me near the raw bar. My dad led the charge, his face a mottled mix of red and purple. Mom was trailing behind, looking terrified. Ethan was nowhere to be seen, probably doing damage control with Leia. "Joshua," Dad said. His voice was tight, vibrating with suppressed emotion. Graham was standing next to me. He saw them coming and stiffened. "Is there a problem?" "We need to speak to our son," Dad said, trying to summon his authority but failing. He looked at Graham. "Alone." Graham looked at me. "Do you want me to stay, Josh?" "It's okay, Graham," I said calmly. "I can handle this." Graham nodded, gave my father a cold look that could have frozen hell, and stepped away to talk to a board member. But he stayed within earshot. "You," Dad started, pointing a finger at me. "You made us look like fools." "I made you look like fools?" I asked, taking a sip of my water. "How?" "You didn't tell us," Mom hissed, grabbing my arm. "We had no idea you were doing this, working with them. Why didn't you say anything?" "Would you have listened?" I asked. "Or would you have told me to stop playing with my computer and get a real job?" "We would have prepared," Dad snapped. "If we knew you were this important to them, we would have leveraged it. We could have positioned Ethan differently." I laughed. Couldn't help it. Even now, with my face on the wall of fame, it was about Ethan. "That's it, isn't it?" I said. "It's always about the image. You didn't care about my success. You care that you didn't get to brag about it. You humiliated your brother," Dad shouted, drawing the attention of a nearby waiter. "Ethan told them you were a loser. He told them you were mentally unstable to explain why you weren't here. And now he looks like a liar." "He is a liar," I said. "How dare you?" Dad stepped forward, raising his hand as if to grab my lapel. Suddenly, a hand clamped onto Dad's shoulder. It wasn't me. It was Graham. "Touch him," Graham said, his voice low and dangerous. "And I will have security throw you out of this resort so fast your head will spin." Dad froze. He looked at Graham, then at the hand on his shoulder. He shrank, physically shrank. "Mr. Harrington," Dad stammered, "this is a family matter. We're just discussing." "You called him a loser," Graham said, releasing Dad with a shove. "I heard you. Let me tell you something, Mr. Bennett. Without this loser, this party doesn't happen. This building doesn't stay full. Half the people in this room would be updating their resumes." Graham looked at Mom, then at Dad. "I can't imagine hiding someone like Joshua," Graham said, his voice filled with genuine disgust. "If he were my son, I'd have shouted his name from the rooftops. But you were ashamed of him. We didn't realize." Mom sobbed. "That's the problem," Graham said. "You didn't look." At that moment, Ethan appeared. He looked disheveled. Leia was with him, and she looked furious. "Graham, sir." Ethan started sweating. "I can explain. It was a miscommunication. Josh is very private." "Stop," Leia said. She stepped forward and looked at me. "You're Joshua?" "I am," I said. "Ethan told me you were unemployed. He told me you were slow," she said, the word dripping with venom. "He said that's why we couldn't invite you, because you wouldn't understand what was happening." I looked at Ethan. He couldn't meet my eyes. "I understood perfectly," I said to Leia. "I understood that I didn't fit the picture." Leia turned to Ethan. She took off the massive diamond ring on her finger. "I don't like liars, Ethan," she said. Her voice was calm, which made it terrifying. And I don't like men who treat their family like garbage to look cool in front of mine. She dropped the ring into his palm. We need to talk, she said. In private. Now. She walked away. Ethan looked at me, his eyes filled with panic and hatred. You did this, he mouthed. No, I said simply. You did. Ethan ran after Leia. My parents were left standing there, isolated in the middle of the ballroom. The elite crowd swirled around them, ignoring them completely. They looked small, old, defeated. Joshua, Mom pleaded, reaching for me. Please, help fix this. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had watched me count sausages and told me to be normal. I looked at the man who had hissed at me in parking lots. I fixed the company, Mom, I said gently. I can't fix this. I turned my back on them and walked toward Graham, who was waiting with a smile and 2 fresh glasses of champagne. To the architect, Graham said, clinking his glass against mine. To the architect, I replied. I took a sip. Tasted like victory. Tasted like freedom. 6 months. That's how long it takes for a world to completely turn on its axis. If you had told me a year ago that I would be standing on the balcony of a penthouse in downtown Chicago, looking out at the skyline with a cup of artisanal coffee in my hand, coffee that I didn't have to worry about affording, I would have laughed. I would have adjusted my hoodie, looked at my shoes, and told you that guys like me don't get the penthouse. We get the basement. We get the situation. But here I was. The wind off Lake Michigan was cold, but the heated floors of my apartment kept me warm. Down in the garage, parked in a spot reserved specifically for Unit 401, was a Porsche 911 Carrera. It was slate gray, understated, deadly fast. I didn't buy it to show off. I bought it because every time I turned the key, the engine roared with a sound that reminded me I was in control. For the first time in my life, I was in the driver's seat. My phone buzzed on the glass railing. It was a notification from my bank. Another retainer fee from Harrington and Vail had just cleared. But it wasn't just them anymore. Since the article in Forbes came out, titled The Hidden Architect, How Joshua Bennett Saved a Legacy, my inbox had become a war zone of offers. Hotel chains in Dubai, tech startups in Silicon Valley, even a frantic request from an airline that was hemorrhaging cash. I was no longer unemployed. I was expensive. But success has a funny way of clarifying who is really in your corner. When you're broke, people ignore you. When you're successful, they either resent you or they want something from you. And my family? They were drowning. I hadn't spoken to them since the night of the gala. I had blocked their numbers the next morning. It was a harsh move, I know. Some people might say it was cruel to cut off your own flesh and blood. But I looked at it like a surgeon removing necrotic tissue. You don't keep the rot just because it's attached to you. You cut it out so the rest of the body can survive. However, silence doesn't stop desperation. I walked back inside, the automatic glass doors sliding shut behind me. My assistant, a sharp young woman named Sarah, was waiting in the living room which doubled as my home office. You have a visitor, Sarah said, looking uncomfortable. He says he's your brother. He's in the lobby. Security won't let him up without your approval. I paused. Ethan. I walked over to the intercom panel on the wall. I pressed the button for the camera feed. There he was. The golden child looked tarnished. Ethan was wearing a suit, but it looked slept in. His tie was loose. He had dark circles under his eyes that no amount of concealer could hide. He was arguing with the doorman, gesturing wildly. The charm that had worked on grandmothers and teachers for 35 years wasn't working on a doorman who was paid to keep riffraff out. I watched him for a moment. A part of me, the part that was still 10 years old and wanted my big brother to play catch with me, felt a pang of pity. But then I remembered the coffee shop. I remembered the $20 he threw at me. I remembered him telling Leia I was slow. Let him up, I said to Sarah. But tell security to wait outside the elevator. 3 minutes later, the elevator doors slid open. Ethan stepped into my penthouse. He stopped dead. He looked around at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern Italian furniture, the massive server rack humming quietly in the corner encased in soundproof glass. He looked at me, standing there in a cashmere sweater and tailored slacks. "Nice place," he croaked. His voice was hoarse. "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked. I didn't offer him a drink. I didn't ask him to sit. "Can't a brother just visit?" He tried to smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "No," I said. "Not this brother. Not after Miami." Ethan flinched. He walked over to the sofa and collapsed onto it uninvited. He put his head in his hands. "It's over, Josh," he whispered. "Everything. It's all gone." I leaned against my desk, crossing my arms. "What's gone?" "Leia," he said. "She didn't just break off the engagement. She went nuclear. She told everyone. She told the partners at my firm that I was a liar and a manipulator. Graham pulled the Harrington account from our firm the next day. Do you know how much that account was worth? Millions." He looked up at me, his eyes red. "The partners fired me, Josh. They said I was a reputational risk. I lost my job. I lost the condo. I was leveraging the lease against the future bonus I was supposed to get from the merger. I have nothing." I looked at him, searching for satisfaction. I thought I would feel happy seeing him brought low. But I didn't feel happy. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger sitting on my couch. "And you came here why?" I asked. "I need help," Ethan said. The words seemed to physically hurt him. "I need a loan, just to get back on my feet. I have debts, Josh. Big debts. I try to keep up the lifestyle, thinking I could fix it. But—" "You want money," I said flatly. "I'm your brother," he shouted, suddenly standing up. "We're family. Dad is having heart palpitations because of the stress. Mom can't stop crying. We are falling apart. And you're sitting here in a damn ivory tower." "I'm sitting here because I built it," I said, my voice rising just a fraction. "I built this brick by brick while you were telling everyone I was too embarrassing to be seen with. We were trying to protect you." Ethan lied. He was still lying. Even now. "Stop," I said. "Just stop. You weren't protecting me. You were protecting your fantasy. You wanted to be the only success story in the Bennett family. And you couldn't handle the fact that the loser brother was actually the one holding the keys to the castle." Ethan stared at me, his chest heaving. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry I didn't invite you. I'm sorry I took the credit. Just help me, please. I need $50,000. That's all. I can pay off the credit cards and hire a headhunter." 50,000. The exact amount of the bonus check I had just received from the airline client. I looked at the check on my desk. Then I looked at Ethan. "No," I said. Ethan looked like I had slapped him. "What?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not giving you money, Ethan. Because if I do, you won't learn a damn thing. You've spent your whole life gliding on charm and Dad's connections. You've never actually failed. Well, welcome to the real world. In the real world, actions have consequences." "You selfish prick," Ethan sneered, his face twisting into ugliness. "You think you're better than us now? You're still just the weird kid counting sausages. You'll always be alone." "I'd rather be alone than be a fraud," I replied. "Get out." Ethan stormed toward the elevator. But before the doors closed, he yelled back, "Mom and Dad are going to lose the house. Did you know that? Without my help, they can't make the payments. I was helping them, Josh. Now I can't. So when they're on the street, that's on you." The doors closed. I stood there in the silence. He was lying again. He hadn't been helping them. I knew that for a fact, because I was the one helping them. I walked over to my secure laptop. I opened the file labeled Heritage Trust. For 3 years, I had been anonymously paying half their mortgage. Every single month. They thought it was luck. They thought it was God. Sometimes they even hinted that Ethan was slipping them cash. And Ethan, being Ethan, never denied it. I looked at the transfer scheduled for the first of the month. I picked up my phone and dialed the bank. "This is Joshua Bennett," I said. "Authorization code Alpha 9 Victor." I need to cancel a recurring standing order. Yes. The Heritage Trust payments. Terminate them immediately and send a final notice to the beneficiaries. Certainly, sir. Should we include a reason for the termination? Yes, I said. Tell them, the architect has resigned. I hung up. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I knew what would happen. Without that money, and with Ethan unemployed, the house of cards would collapse. They would lose the colonial house with the creaky floorboards. They would lose the status symbol they clung to so desperately. But I realized something crucial. I wasn't saving them. I was enabling them. I was paying for the stage upon which they acted out their cruelty toward me. I sat down in my leather chair and looked out at the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gold. My phone rang again. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. Mom calling. She would be crying. She would be begging. She would use every guilt trip in the book. After all we did for you. We raised you. We fed you. I let it ring. The voicemail notification popped up. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. Instead, I called Sam. Hey, boss. Sam answered on the first ring. What's the word? The word is freedom, I said. Cancel my meetings for tomorrow. I'm taking the Porsche out. I'm going to drive until I run out of road. Good for you, Sam said. By the way, Graham called. He wants to have lunch next week. He says he has a new project. Something about expanding into Europe. Tell him I'm interested, I said. But my rates just went up. I already told him that, Sam laughed. He said you're worth double. I hung up and smiled. That night, I didn't sleep in the fetal position. I didn't stare at the ceiling wondering if I was good enough. I slept sprawled out in my king-sized bed, surrounded by the quiet hum of a life that I had built with my own hands. The nightmare of the hallway was over. The dawn had finally broken. The drive along the Pacific Coast Highway is supposed to be one of the most beautiful in the world. They aren't wrong. 3 weeks after the confrontation with Ethan, I found myself in California. I had shipped the Porsche out there because I needed to see something other than skyscrapers. I needed to see the edge of the continent. I pulled over at a cliffside lookout near Big Sur. The ocean crashed against the rocks hundreds of feet below. The air smelled of salt and sagebrush. I leaned against the hood of the car, feeling the warmth of the engine radiating through the metal. My phone was in my pocket. It had been quiet for the last few days. The storm of calls from my family had finally died down. They had received the letter from the bank. The Heritage Trust was closed. The revelation had hit them like a meteor. I finally listened to the voicemail my mother left me the day the letter arrived. It was the only one I kept. Joshua. Her voice was shaking, unrecognizable. We got the letter. The bank. They said it was you. All this time. It was you paying the mortgage? Not Ethan? Why? Why didn't you tell us? She paused, and I could hear her weeping. We are losing the house, Josh. Dad is... He's just sitting in his chair staring at the wall. We have to sell. We have to move into a condo. Please, son. Call us. We're sorry. We didn't know. We didn't know. That was their defense until the bitter end. Ignorance. But ignorance is a choice when the truth is standing right in front of you, begging to be seen. I didn't call back. I sent a letter through my lawyer. It was brief. It stated that I would not be reinstating the payments, but I had set up a small, one-time emergency fund to help them with the moving costs. It was enough to get them into a modest apartment. It was charity, not support. It was the final act of a son doing his duty, not a child seeking love. I looked out at the ocean. I felt a strange lightness in my chest. For years, I had been carrying a boulder up a mountain, hoping that if I just carried it high enough, they would finally clap. I had dropped the boulder, and I was still standing. Nice car. I turned around. A woman was standing nearby, taking a photo of the view. She lowered her camera and smiled at me. She was about my age, wearing hiking gear. Thanks, I said. It's new. It suits you, she said. You look like someone who enjoys the drive more than the destination. I smiled. I think I'm starting to. She nodded and walked away back to her trail. A simple interaction. No judgment. No expectations. Just two human beings existing in the same space. I got back in the car and drove to a small resort in Santa Barbara. It wasn't a Harrington property. It was a competitor. I checked in under my own name. That evening, I sat on the terrace of the hotel restaurant. I had a meeting scheduled, but not a business one. Graham Harrington walked onto the terrace. He was wearing linen pants and a casual shirt, looking far more relaxed than the CEO I knew in suits. "Joshua," he greeted me warmly, pulling out a chair. "You're hard to track down. Sam told me you were on a vision quest." "Something like that," I said, pouring him a glass of water. I needed to clear my head. "Understandable," Graham said. "Family mess is the worst kind of mess. Corporate bankruptcy? Easy. You file Chapter 11, you restructure. Family bankruptcy? That leaves scars." "How is Leia?" I asked. Graham sighed. "She's hurting, but she's strong. She's throwing herself into her charity work. She actually asked about you. She wanted to know if you were okay. Tell her I'm fine. Tell her I'm sorry she got caught in the crossfire." "She doesn't blame you, Josh," Graham said seriously. "She blames herself for not seeing the signs. We all have our blind spots." He took a sip of water. "I have a proposition for you," Graham said. "I thought we talked about my rates," I joked. "Not a contract," Graham shook his head. "A partnership. I'm stepping down as CEO next year. I'm moving to chairman of the board. I need someone to oversee the digital transformation of the entire holding company. Not just the resorts. The real estate, the logistics, everything." He looked me in the eye. "I don't want a consultant, Joshua. I want a chief strategy officer. I want you on the board. Equity. The whole 9 yards. I stared at him. Chief strategy officer. It was a position that people worked 40 years to get near. "Why me?" I asked. "You could hire anyone. Ivy League guys with pedigrees." "I have plenty of pedigree guys." Graham waved his hand dismissively. "They tell me what I want to hear. They polish the truth until it shines. You looked me in the eye when I was losing millions and told me my baby was ugly. You value the truth more than the optics. That's what I need. The truth more than the optics." It was the exact opposite of my father. My father would burn the truth to keep the optics warm. Graham was willing to smash the optics to find the truth. "I have one condition," I said. "Name it." "I work remotely when I want. And I don't wear ties unless it's a board meeting." Graham laughed, clinking his glass against mine. "Done. Welcome to the family, Joshua. The real one. The real one." That night, alone in my hotel room, I thought about that phrase. Family isn't just whose DNA you share. It isn't just the people who sit around your Thanksgiving table because they have to. Family are the people who see you. The real you. Not the version they want you to be. Not the version that makes them look good. But the messy, complicated, brilliant reality of who you are. I opened my laptop. I had one last piece of data to process. I opened the folder containing the photos from the New Year's Eve gala. The photographer had sent them over weeks ago, but I hadn't looked at them. I scrolled through. There were pictures of the decor, the food, the guests. Then I found it. A wide shot of the moment the curtain fell. In the center, my portrait on the wall of innovation, glowing like a beacon. On the right, Graham and Celeste, beaming with pride. On the left, in the shadows, my parents and Ethan. I zoomed in on their faces. It wasn't just shock. It was fear. The fear of people who realize they have bet on the wrong horse. The fear of people who realize they threw away a diamond because they thought it was just a jagged rock. I looked at my own face in the photo. The real me standing on stage. I didn't look like a victim. I didn't look like a vengeful spirit. I looked like a man who was exactly where he was supposed to be. I closed the laptop. I walked out onto the balcony of my room. The California stars were bright above me. My phone buzzed. A text from Sam. "Sam, heard the news about the CSO position. Drinks on you when you get back. Also, the new algorithm just predicted a 20% spike for Q3. You're a wizard, Josh. I typed back. Not a wizard. Just an architect. I put the phone down. I thought about the boy counting sausages at the barbecue. I thought about the teenager wiping marinara sauce off a stranger's dress while his father hissed at him. I thought about the man in the hoodie hiding in the hallway. I wished I could go back and tell that boy something. I would tell him, hold on. Don't shrink. Don't try to fit into their small square boxes. You are building a skyscraper, and they are just staring at the sidewalk. Keep building. My name is Joshua Bennett. I am 33 years old, and I am no longer the secret. I am the standard. And as for my family, I hope they find peace. I really do, but they will have to find it without me. I have an empire to build. What you just heard was the story of Joshua, but in many ways, it is the story of anyone who has ever been made to feel less than by the people who were supposed to love them the most. There are 3 critical lessons I want us to take away from Joshua's journey today. First, your value is inherent, not relative. Joshua was a genius strategist whether his family acknowledged it or not. Their inability to see his worth did not diminish his worth. It only diminished their access to it. Never let someone else's blindness define your vision. Second, financial independence is the ultimate shield. The moment Joshua stopped needing his family's approval was powerful, but the moment he realized they needed him was the turning point. By quietly building his own stability, he removed the leverage they had over him. Work on your own foundation in silence if you have to, so that when the storm comes, you are the shelter, not the victim. Third, and perhaps most importantly, toxic loyalty is a trap. We are taught that family is everything, that we must forgive and enable them no matter the cost. But as Joshua showed us, sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is love people from a distance. Cutting off the heritage trust wasn't an act of malice. It was an act of boundary setting. You cannot set yourself on fire just to keep others warm, especially when they complain about the smoke. I want to know what you think. Have you ever had to distance yourself from family to save your own sanity? What was the moment you realized you had to choose yourself? If you enjoyed the story and support the message of reclaiming your self-worth, please comment the word good below. This simple comment helps me know that these stories are resonating with you and encourages me to bring you more narratives of strength and redemption. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are the architect of your own life. Don't let anyone else hold the blueprints.